able to go and report about it. I'll just give an example. There was a case of a chief here in Botswana. Some prefer the term king in South Africa. Most of our papers or most of our media houses were unable to go to South Africa just next door to go and report on that case. So these are some of the challenges. So we also need to stop this poverty mentality, because it's not only in this country. We lack bleeding poverty, and it's an African problem. And that's part of the reason why Africa is not developing, because we are used to handouts. Even when we are able, we don't want to spend our own resources to achieve our desired goals. So I agree that we must take the proactive step to make sure that we educate our people. When you look at the climate change sector, you find that you have protocols, you've got conventions, and some of them are coined in jargon that the journalists have got a responsibility to distill it in very simple language, demystify it, so that the ordinary man can understand. The climate scientists like Prof will talk about loss and damage. They'll talk about sink strategies. These are things that the ordinary person may not understand. But the duty of a journalist is not to regurgitate what has been said, but to simplify it so that the ordinary person can understand. Let me stop here for now.
Thank you, really sweetie. I just want to take it to you, camera. I did state in that figure that in 2015, 1,000 broadcasters in Paris endorsed the Paris Declaration on broadcast media and climate change, pledging to increase coverage on climate change. Just taking it up to you, how much of that have you done within the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation? Also, just to allow you to give the context of how climate change is impacting you in Sierra Leone and what you're doing to infuse that in your coverage.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I am especially grateful to be here on this panel. My first AUB event ever. I am probably one of the newest delegates here. I just joined the Sierra Leone Broadcasting in March of this year. So I am really grateful to the AUB team for inviting us to continue to participate in such a forum. As we gather today, I'm actually reminded very vividly about an old African proverb, which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, what do? We do it together. So just a reminder to all of us, this wisdom is actually underscoring the essence of why we're here today. We're in this together, and therefore we should all be in this fight against climate change. It requires a collective action. And of course, the media, like the wise professor says, plays a very crucial role in mobilizing and empowering citizens to take part in this global effort. So allow me to share a very poignant story about my own country, Sierra Leone. In August of 2017, we experienced a very devastating landslide in a hill town called Regent Village. It's a suburb outside of the capital in Freetown. So the mudslide or the landslide actually occurred after 3 days of torrential rain. Every year around this year, July to August, Sierra Leoneans are scared, like really dead scared. So when I come down south and I hear about drought, what a difference that makes. All of July for this, for example, this year, we had continuous rain, almost 29 days of rain, non-stop in July. It's only the mercy of God that our soils did not erode again this year. But there was constant flooding as well as deaths. And of course, landslides, but deaths did not occur. In 2017, we lost about more than 1,140 Sierra Leoneans and 3,000 more lost their homes. And 1,140 were just those that were recorded. We don't know how many were not recorded. It was a devastating experience. The immediate response of the media actually was to cover the tragedy. It was very tragic, but it did not stop there. Climate beat reporters, which we have formed in our own entities, as well as journalists across the board who were not on the climate beat, used their platforms to highlight the underlying causes. And some of these causes, my colleague panelists have already mentioned. In Sierra Leone, mostly, it's deforestation, poor urban planning, and of course, sand mines, because we live, especially the capital is on a coastal region, beautiful, pristine beaches. Some of these beaches have never been visited or tampered with. So but there's a lot of sand mining. Freetown has become a construction site where a lot of people are moving and building homes, because I think there is a new kind of prosperity. So that's what exposure to modernization does. So through persistent storytelling, the local communities came together to plant trees. Freetown City Mayor has a project that they were supposed, I think is affiliated along the Great Green Wall, which the AU is also implementing along the Sahel region. So the Freetown City Mayor got project funding where they were supposed to plant 1 million trees in Freetown alone. So journalists were able to create awareness around that, and they were also able to participate, sharing their own personal experiences. The media was also able to advocate for better policies on land creation. Today, there is a land commission that the current government has actually established, and that land commission just started work this year. This collective response is not only helped to, in the immediate aftermath, but it also laid the groundwork for sustainable best practices. So the media adopted a multifaceted approach in Sierra Leone. First, journalists told, and they have also continued to tell the compelling stories that are really human interest type, human-centered type stories that resonate with the audience, because we know when I share my experience and you listen to it, there's a possibility that you may also change your behavior to meet my own experience. Some of these stories, like I said, highlighted personal experiences and local heroes who are really making a difference in the environmental space. Journalists integrated tips in their stories on reducing carbon footprints, like the cutting of timber, trees, felling of trees for timber production. They practice and they participate in, and also they report in community cleanup efforts, because our gutter systems are so poorly done, and I'm sure in many urban cities in Africa, we are experiencing the same thing. Our gutter systems are so poor. Journalists participated together with communities. They come together on a monthly basis to clean the streets of the capital, Freetown, because people would just normally dump trash in, waiting for the rains to come and sweep them in the Atlantic Ocean. But because the trash is so much and the gutters are so tight, the trash remains and then flooding occurs. So
work that you report on that was done by the journalists, was it intentional? Is it something that is embedded in your editorial policies or the broadcasters' strategic policies within the organization?
So we've not institutionalized this, but there are climate beat reporters that have come together and set themselves up as pressure group, and they are actually engaging. But these are not things that have been done. I have just joined the system this year, and these are things that I would love to promote as I was talking to some of the national broadcasters that I work with.
I just want to bring you also on board with the issue of editorial policy, or for example, when we talk about a broadcaster and really just embedding reporting on environmental issues and climate change into the broadcaster's editorial policy. How would that then facilitate our role as advocates, as the media?
That's very important because you see, if you don't have a clear direction of where we are going, you are going to be moving, bumping into things without a clear direction. So it's important that you have those policies, and then they will inform your action. Because the media has a watchdog role too. We have to realize that in terms of the different protocols and conventions, like in front of me here, I've got the main convention document, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change of 1992.
Kyoto
It
Protocol.
enjoins governments. They have commitments to do certain things to reduce those carbon emissions, to measure the level of pollution and other situations that lead to climate change. They've got that duty to measure and report on a periodical basis to the conference of parties. So the media has to hold the governments to account. And that is where where investigative journalism comes in. I know that state broadcasters on the continent shun public broadcast and shun investigative journalism. I don't know what is the situation in other jurisdictions. In Botswana, I know that that hardly takes place. That is a constraint because investigative journalism is not equivalent to scandal mongering. No, it's not about that. I think that somehow scares our governments to allow investigative journalism. But we require that to be able to showcase what is happening in the hinterland of the country. Because mostly we report about what is happening in the cities, especially for the private media. Of course, the state media has the resources and also has it in the agenda to follow what is happening in the country and reflect the totality of the truth of what is happening in the country. But I cannot say the same about the private broadcasters, at least in this country. So we've got that challenge, but we have a duty to make sure that we hold government to account, because the figures that you started with at when you opened the panel, they show that climate change is a reality. Actually, I'm surprised that, when I was looking at the manifestos of different political parties, none of them talks about climate change, which shows us that we have a long way to go. I don't know in other countries, but that just shows us that climate change is still something that is not quite well grasped, but it's a serious challenge that you are faced with in this continent. Because when the world started conversing about climate change, of course, Africans were not party to it, because we are slow to do things. I don't know what is this mentality that we have of, if I were to write another chapter in the Bible, it would read like, you Africans, who has bewitched you? Because we are always the ones who have, we are always coming behind. Even when we have the resources, we have the experts, we have the money. Like I said, we would plead poverty. But Africa's potential, the richest continent.
Thank you,
It's
Mr.
just that we are
Tsogwane.
sleeping on our
Thank you. I just want to speak to the audience and ask any of the broadcasters here, how many of you have embedded the issue within your editorial policies coverage of climate issues? I just want to see by a show of hand how many of you have embedded this in your policies in your different organizations. That's great. Any other one by show of hand? If there's nobody, I'll just allow you to speak on what you've done, what your policy says in that regard, sir. Yes.
So, Madam, you have chosen to punish me again.
I was,
We at TBC, you see, I thank you for your presentation, in particular your examples. We have experienced firsthand effects of climate change. We have seen floods, even this year, devastating floods, where hundreds of people lost their lives and property. But we have also seen landslides, the likes of which we have never seen or experienced in our country. I think there was an event which was an international event in northern Tanzania. And I could go on and on. So we at TBC have a policy that these are issues we shouldn't shy away from. And I like the point that Doctor there made about public media not being able to undertake investigative journalism. We do. And even where we see that there are policy problems when it comes to environmental protection and other issues related to the environment in general, we actually raise them up. We investigate and we raise them up. We at TBC have actually started every month, on the 27th of every month, we as TBC ourselves are involved in planting of trees. We plant trees up to 400 in a month, and that happens throughout the country. We mobilize people to do that. So we have other partners that are joining us now to do that. But we also do the cleaning, and we do that forefront as TBC, showing others why it is important to do so. But even in our news item, we have made it a point that at least every day there has to be an item that addresses issues of environment. And like right now, our president is actually the champion of clean energy cooking, for example. Soon Tanzania is going to ban charcoal, the use of charcoal. We have a program, and TBC is leading in terms of awareness and debates that take place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure some of the broadcasters around here can borrow and leave from what you're doing at TBC. I'm being told that we need to move faster. I just want to take it to you, Prof. Usually the challenge in advocacy is getting the public to understand the complex issues. The subject matter when you talk about climate change is always very complex. I just want to find out what you as experts are doing to align with media houses to push the climate literacy agenda.
Thank you very much. It's election year in Botswana this year. Right now, you look at what Duma FM is doing. They're moving around the country. RB1 as well, they're moving around the country. They're organizing some experts. They bring in experts to address various issues that affect the people in the country. So I usually say, when it comes to climate change, maybe the media can do the same. You can do the same. You come to the Northwest, for example, where I live in the Okavango. You look at the issues which are there, the drought. Right now, we have a situation whereby, because of the drought, elephants can smell water in the villages. And most of the elephants are moving towards the villages. In the villages, you do have your water, you do have your reservoirs, your jojos, and elephants are busy into the village. Journalists can organize a platform like that one in Maung, in Kasani, and then you bring the experts in the area, those who studied elephants, those who studied human-wildlife conflicts, and talk about the drought situation. What happens when there's a drought like that? We have heard what the Neo in Botswana, those floods which happened. Up to now, the road between Nata and Zoroga has not been made. It's still gravel, it's still the soil. The tarmac is gone. Why not organize experts in floods? Go to Nata, bring in the communities at the Kota, talk about the floods. Teach people about the floods. We have the climate change policy in Botswana. Why don't we have a situation whereby the journalists come and talk about whether this policy is being implemented or not? Organize that. There was an issue in Botswana earlier this year where churches were marching in the streets about a bill that was to be passed. I can't remember what the bill was all about. But what I know is that churches were marching in the streets because somebody sensitized the churches. Somebody sensitized organizations that are leading the churches. Why can't journalists do the same in Botswana about topical issues that are happening in the country? If we've had bills in this country, and I've looked at some of those bills, some of those motions, which are completely contradicting what you are supposed to do to promote environmental sustainability. Journalists are supposed to come forward and do that to sensitize the public. We were talking about the newspapers. I'm one person who buys a newspaper, and I read specific columns. And my wife usually tells me that, why are you buying a newspaper and only read one section? Why can't we have sections in newspapers in Botswana? This one is for the environment, this one is for tourism, this one is for what? And you bring the experts into the area. In addition to that, he said a very good point that we need to train people in environmental issues, journalists in environmental issues. You watch CNN, there's a doctor, Sanjay Gupta, he's a medical doctor, but he's reporting about medical issues. On CNN, whenever there's a medicine issue, Dr. Sanjay Gupta comes in. Why can't we do the same? Training our journalists. Get your bachelor's degree, media studies at UB, but specialize on climate change and start reporting on climate change. That's what I would say for now that we can do as journalists. There's a lot that we can do.
Thank you so much, Professor Mbayu. I'm sure what you've said really resonates with Dr. Litswiti. But as a way of conclusion, because we've run out of time, I just want to start with you, Camera, to speak about what relationships you have with the experts to make sure that whatever good work you do in the area of journalism, there is no disinformation.
I talk about climate literacy, actually. There's a lot of willpower to actually collaborate with experts on climate change. One of the things that we've done is when our climate beat reporters or even the journalists who are covering climate action or climate issues, they go back to our climate experts within the country to fact check the information, so that when information is given out, even if it's to the agriculturist in the farthest, remotest, hard to reach region of the country, that information is the actual information that must get to that individual or to those communities. This can also help, fact checking can help in debunking some of the myths around climate action. We also work with scientists, especially UN partners, to simplify some of the scientific data that we use for mass consumption. So journalists don't just report. I take myself, since I've been on board, a personal interest in actually reviewing every story on climate action or on the environment that goes out. So these are, I'm like the editor. They're like, oh, DG, you're very busy. I have to see it, because we want to make sure that we give the correct information that is accurate for people to consume.
Thank you so much, Camera. Litswiti, your closing statement, I would like you to also touch on the relationship that journalists need to really forge with subject matter specialists.
Yeah, it's important to, I once read something like the difference between a good editor and a bad editor is that the good editor knows when to ask for help. The bad editor doesn't know when to ask for help. So even if you are deficient in an area like that is outside your knowledge as a journalist, it's important that you ask others. It's not wrong for you to be ignorant. You can't know everything. But it's important that you ask others. People never succeed alone, but they fail alone. So the experts are here. There's no country which is short of experts. So we just need to reach out to them. And then lastly, apart from the journalists themselves being provided with training by the media houses, there's something called personal development that they must engage in. I remember when I was a reporter at Miri newspaper, I established myself as a leading court reporter and eventually just a law reporter. So I made sure that I hung around lawyers. I read everything that had to do with law. I even took up studies in some area of law so that I could be a better reporter. So personal development is also important. Don't just wait for your bosses to take you to school. Do something yourself with the little that you have. Stop pleading poverty and take Africa somewhere.
Thank you so much, Relitwiti. Your final word, Professor Mbayua Mojamarahu.
I think journalists should know that they are very powerful. They can actually build a nation and they can also destroy a nation. So when it comes to issues of climate change, you can build our people, you can also break them up. So see that you have a role, to raise awareness, influence policy, promote community engagement, facilitate dialogue, and disseminate information on climate change. That's what you need to know. That's what you need to do. I'm aware that resources, especially for the private journalist, it's a challenge. There was a talk the other day whether journalists or media houses should be funded in Botswana.
Yeah.
I saw it. I know that those challenges in resources, but we're talking about artificial
intelligence.
AI in the morning. Maybe it's because I'm a farmer as well. We're talking about AI in the morning. Let's maybe improvise and do something and report about climate change to our people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camera, Professor Mbayua and Dr. Litwiti. Thanks for being such an insightful panel. And to you, the audience, thanks for being engaged.
Right, thank you very much, Kefilo, and thank you once again to our panelists. Such topics are generally engaging, and I suppose with limited time we have, there's only so much that we can talk about, because being in a media environment and the principal existence is that of dissemination of information, you can never really have enough time. Right. If I could just quickly ready our next panelists in the interest of time. And please, ladies and gentlemen, let me just quickly remind you that by 6 o'clock, we should be making our way to the next venue. So I will give you the necessary information as we go towards the end of this particularly plenary as to what needs to happen. So for now, for the next panel discussion, let me invite our moderator, Onenge Fanefayesi. And our panelists are Maha Shrabi, Sales Director of Roden Schwartz. It's a broadcast distribution, and Emmanuel Wongibe. And finally, Mary Daraja. Is that fine? You're the moderator. Okay. No, this is Matt. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. When the maize yields plummets, it's like a punch to the guts. It feels like we're constantly being pushed down. And it's becoming harder and harder to find the strength to get back up. I can only manage to provide 1 meal a day. By June, we will completely run out of food. This is the pain of robots, a husband and father from Malawi. He expressed this pain in June to the World Food Programme. We are in September, and there is no telling what may have become of Robert, members of his family, and million others suffering the excruciating impact of drought in southern Africa. In this part of the panel on climate change, we examine how to build our own resilience so that we can survive the crisis, to continue the business of saving lives, to give the likes of Mr. Robert hope and strength to get back up. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted once again to welcome for this session of the Super Panel on Climate Change, Maha Shrabi, Sales Director, MEA Broadcast Distribution. Thank you for joining us. Emmanuel Wangibe is also a media trainer and has been involved in the AUB UNDRR Media Saving Lives project for a couple of years now. Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel, for joining us as well. And all the way from Kenya, we have someone that experienced what it means for the media to themselves be victims of climate change. Mary Daraja of Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. Let's take a short clip while they set up for this session. Can the media assist us with that clip, please?
Perhaps keep it. Okay.
While we wait for that, during climate emergencies, it's important to note that no one is spared, not even the media. Media practitioners, like every other citizen, suffer the impact. Broadcast and other operational facilities, including buildings, are often inundated or hugely impacted as well. So, what do we do in the face of climate shocks to ensure that we remain alive and our facilities operational as we continue the business of saving lives? Our panelists are ready now, so we go straight to the conversation. And I want to begin from Kenya with Mary Daraja. A few months ago, Kenya was hit by heavy floods, and this affected some broadcast facilities of the KBC. Can you please share with us what the experience was like, how it affected KBC, and what solutions you were able to provide in the face of that challenging and devastating flood? Mary Daraja.
Okay, thank you very much. You will all agree with me that journalists prepare others and forget to prepare themselves. They warn others and forget about themselves. It's happened in different ways that you advocate for others, but we forget about ourselves. But going straight to the subject, yes, we had heavy rains in May this year. It was not expected. It was expected earlier than May, but May we expected normal rains. However, things turned around. As you know, with climate change, things change. The meteorologists did their work, but the weather changed, the temperatures changed, and we had to experience the heavy rains when we least expected. So as Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, as a public service broadcaster, we are expected to ensure that every Kenyan access information on the critical issues in the country, issues of national interest, public policy, and news about the continent and globally. So when the rains came, we did not expect that we were going to experience heavy floods, particularly in Nairobi, And therefore, we had, in some areas in the environs of Nairobi, we had mudslides, and we have some of our journalists who commute from the environs to the capital city. In Nairobi itself, we had some roads that were swept away. So, and we had not anticipated that. So having employees to come to work, we had to immediately embark on ensuring that we have our employees' safety put in place. And we also had to ensure that they get to work and go back home safely. So what did that mean is to change the programming and also change the timetables to ensure that the workers who live near the corporation, that is in the capital, were the ones to work during that period. Because those who live in the environs, it was very difficult to get them to work. We also had to change in some areas to have some of the journalists work for more hours than usual, because they had to cover up shifts for those that who could not make it to work. Thankfully, when it comes to equipment, not so much of our equipment was destroyed, because for our transmission stations, most of them are on higher grounds. But still, we had some of our transmission stations affected, because we had one where the mast caved in. It collapsed because of the heavy rains. And therefore, we had to look for ways to ensure that we restore it quickly, to ensure that broadcasting continued. We had areas where we lost electricity. And for 3 weeks, we didn't have electricity in that area because of floods. And they could not restore electricity because there was fear that people could be electrocuted. So we were affected in that way. So in those areas, we resorted to technology, whereby we were streaming for those who could receive us, because some of the homes have solar power. And we also were using social media for those who could access us on mobile phones, for us to actually communicate information about the floods, the rains, what is expected, the people who are expected to be evacuated, because we had some people who were to be evacuated, they had been marooned in water. And we had areas where road communication was completely cut off, and flights could not fly over those areas. Therefore, they were completely cut off from the rest of the country. So only information could assist them on how to navigate.
And the media had to be alive to do that.
Yes.
So you also had to play your own role. I want to move quickly to Mr. Mawe Wangibe as a media executive and media trainer. Using the context of what happened in Kenya, can you share with us, in your own opinion, the best ways broadcasters can build their resilience? You need your infrastructure safe. When they are affected, what do you do? What are the strategies that can be adopted so that you take care of yourself, take care of your property, and do the job of saving lives?
Thank you. I use two words: flexibility, acknowledgement. Flexibility, and I'm talking from the perspective of management, is a simple call to listen to people with whom you work. We've seen this quite a bit in our coverage of COVID. It was something new to all of us, and we were lucky to have some of our journalists who said, yes, we'll step in and cover for this. But what seemed to us was something which was passing over in a few weeks or days or months, prolonged to months and almost years. What we thought was affecting us as individuals went to schools. We had to close schools and the rest of it. Flexibility. How did flexibility come in here? And I take the particular example of the Cameroon radio television. The first point of flexibility, and Mary has also mentioned part of it, is what do you do with your program? Your program cannot be something that is written on stone. It must be flexible. Flexibility to cope with the challenges of COVID for a public service broadcaster like us was, we ended up saying, together with the Ministry of Secondary Education and Higher Education, we were getting towards the last months of final exams. What did we do? The Cameroon Radio Television stepped in quickly, changed its programs, and introduced, for a period of 3 months, online courses for children who were back at home. Had we not been flexible, students would have been out of school, and yet, having exams coming in 3 months, we would have literally been going towards a point where you said exams had to be cancelled. Exams were not cancelled in Cameroon, and students were not in school because of the risk of contamination, thanks to the collaboration between the public service broadcaster and the ministries of basic and secondary education that provided an alternative for students to continue studying. For our staff, what does flexibility mean? It meant that you had to be listening to a reporter who has been on this beat who says, I feel tired, I feel exhausted. While we were busy counseling and sharing all sorts of practical ways of survival with caregivers to those who are suffering from COVID, we were not listening to our journalists who were suffering a result of the burnout from seeing people dying in numbers they have not seen before. Are we listening enough? And when we listen, do we respond? It is not out of nothing that a reporter who has been on a beat that is so demanding suddenly starts telling you, I feel tired, I feel I want to rest. Let's listen. My last point, I said, was acknowledgement. We build resilience by telling people we acknowledge what they do. We trust in their sense of judgment and commitment. Come past COVID, come past the various disasters we have had, a disaster in which you lose close to 1,000 something people, like in Sierra Leone, counted, and maybe 2,000 because there are so many unknown and unidentified cases. What do you do for reporters who have stayed on such a beat for such a long time, covering day and night? Do we acknowledge what they do to build their resistance and to build their resilience and their belief that they're doing something useful? At times, it doesn't take anything magical. It's at the end of it all, times are getting good, and maybe in one occasion during the life of our organization, maybe it's our Labor Day, and we decide to send a letter of congratulations to the teams that worked on this beat, acknowledging what we did. We build their resilience, we build their conviction and their belief in themselves for what they do. It is a call for us to be innovative as we manage, because it is evident to us the challenges, whether they are communicable diseases, we are told are going to live with us. And it is true. Soon after COVID, here are we today talking about monkeypox, beginning in a few countries, and now we hear it's getting all over the world. These are challenges that risk living with us for long, and we need to be innovative in how we do our work and how we make our staff believe that what they're doing is important and that we do acknowledge
and appreciate their
Thank
efforts. Thank you very much. Now, we do understand that technology is key to building resilience, and that's where Maha Shrabi comes in to share with us a particular innovation you have that is, I think, climate smart broadcasting with 5G. Can you share with us how that can help build our resilience as broadcasters, and how we can share or partake of the benefit it offers.
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, I would like to talk a little bit about two subjects. The first subject is how to fight from a technology perspective and reduce the carbon emission in order to help with the climate change. Second, today, and we heard a lot about disaster happening, and today we have the possibility of using the technology to save the life of the citizens. So if I start talking about the reduction of carbon, this is a real responsibility on the full society, not only at the government level, but at each person. And we, as a manufacturer of terrestrial transmission systems that is used by the broadcasters to distribute their content to the population, we take care of having a latest technology that will help reducing the carbon emission by 50%. As all of you may know, there are regulations in the full, I would say, world in order to reduce the carbon emission by some percentage within a certain time frame. And I can tell you that this is very challenging. In Europe, we have to reduce by 50% by 2030, and in Africa, it's 32% by 2030. So how we can do that in our technology? As you may know, the terrestrial infrastructure that is a must to have for all governments in order to own the content that they distribute to the population, this type of infrastructure use a high energy. And using and consuming high energy means emitting more and more CO2. So if I take an example from your today infrastructure, one of your transmitter that has a power of 3 kilowatts is today emitting 14 tons per year. With the new technologies that Rod and Schwartz has developed, you will reduce it till 6 tons per year, so even more than 50%. This is very important because those type of transmitters are installed in a big number in a territory. So every, I would say, bouquet or multiplex require one transmitter per site. And you have in your country 30 to 40 sites, plus multiple multiplex. So it's a big, I would say, consumption of energy that we need to control. And how we do it? We do it by first changing the way how we cool our transmitter. So we do not cool it by air, by liquid. And this is very important because the transmitter is capable to cool itself. So we will not rely anymore on the external source of cooling like the AC. So also we reduce the energies that the AC are consuming. This type of transmitter is mainly autonomous. So we do not need to send too much engineer every day to troubleshoot the transmitter. So we reduce the energies that you are using to go to the site. So what I want to explain is that this is a full chain in which we can improve the emission of CO2 at all levels. So other than that, I would like to talk also about how we can save lives. So I heard that in Kenya there has been so much incidents and where the broadcast infrastructure was down. And I can say I'm a little bit surprised because we consider that the broadcast infrastructure is one of the most reliable in the country. So if I go and compare it with the telecom infrastructure, that in terms of disaster, the telecom cell will become saturated and we will not be able to do even a call. The broadcast infrastructure is very reliable, but for sure we need to implement this reliability, to have a generator, a dual generator, to have a high tower on which we will install our antenna. And all those systems in a redundant mode will help to have a very, I would say, reliable infrastructure during disaster. So today, all the world is talking about 5G broadcast. What is 5G broadcast? All of us, we have heard about the digital TV, and this is where today in Africa there are a lot of projects happening by migrating from the analog TV to the digital TV. Digital TV needs a transmitter. So 5G broadcast is the future, and the 5G broadcast will allow you not to target anymore the TV at home, but to target the mobile phone of the population. And this is where your role became that you will be able to save lives. So we want you to be proactive and not reactive to a disaster. Today, we can say that you are reactive because a disaster happened, we go, we shoot photos, then we distribute the content. But tomorrow, using 5G broadcast, you will become proactive. You will know from the meteorology in your country that there is a flood happening or there is a cyclone or any type of disaster. You will immediately inform the full population directly on their mobile phone, not only by audio or video or maps or even multimedia messages. So even people who do not know how to read, people who do not speak the language of the country, even children can be guided in such a disaster. And this is very important because
I want to take a second question, so you just continue with the flow of your thoughts. Where does the private sector come into this? As far as supporting, Mahal is still with you, as far as supporting the African media to transmit is concerned. The role of the private sector in all of this. Mahal Shrabi, you still have the mic, go on. No, Shrabi, go on. Go on. Still go on. Yeah.
I saw the question was
No.
for my colleague.
No, it was.
So can you please repeat it?
Where does the private sector come in all of this to support the African media, public broadcasters especially, to build this resilient infrastructure you're talking about?
So the most important, as we said, because today the most resilient infrastructure being the one that is used by the broadcasters, we need really to implement redundancy at all levels. And this is what will secure the fact when any disaster will happen, that we will be there to protect the life of the population and the citizens. So this is what is the most important in our side.
Thank you very much. I want to go back to Mr. Wangibe as a media executive. You talked about staff. I was expecting a little more, so I will give you the mic again to talk about infrastructure. Do we have resilient infrastructure? If we do not have, what do we need? How do we achieve that kind of resilience such that when there is panic everywhere around us, we are sure we can still stay afloat and continue the business of saving lives?
Infrastructure is not something that you build overnight. It requires planning. You don't build it for convenience. I take the example of a transmitter. You can only put it in a particular location because you want to cover a certain area. You are bound by natural factors, maybe the geology of the area, to plant your transmitter at a particular place. The only point I think so far that as management you try to do is, and it's limited to certain aspects, try to, for instance, if you're thinking of your data, the cloud, for instance, today is a way of storing data that is not physical. Yes, you have your physical storage of data, but you can store data in the cloud. You can store them in other locations, so just so that if something happens, if it were a flood that could destroy things in your company, your principal data is also stored somewhere else where you can have it as a backup. And there are so many such facilities, companies that offer facilities for storage. And I think it's only in these areas that you can preempt, you can anticipate and take a few moves, without which I think you would be you would just be lucky that a disaster happened and it did not touch an area where any of your key infrastructure are found. I would not set up my transmitters in the city if I want to cover the rural area because I feel protected. They have to be where there is need. Technology can help us in those areas where we are not dealing with tangibles. If we are dealing with data, yes, data can be stored anywhere today, and you pick it up whenever you want. Apart from that, I don't see in any way how we could be more innovative in thinking about infrastructure and disasters that come.
Thank you very much. I want to believe we have other heads of organizations and experts that want to share thoughts with us, perhaps of successful stories or success stories of those that have dealt with situations like this and would like others to emulate. If we have any such intervention, this is a conversation I would like us to take, some of them before we take final thoughts from our panelists. If we have any contributions on how we can build our resilience as broadcasters, then this is the best time to take them. If we, okay, good. Okay, who can help us pass the mic? You have access to the mic?
I think I have one.
Okay, good.
Yes. From MT Africa, I'd just like to express a very big support for the interest the private sector should play in terms of assisting the media for the climate change issue. Now, most of the private sector organizations do have what we call corporate social responsibility funds. And these funds should be channeled to this particular area to assist the media in terms of climate change. Other aspect is that most of the broadcast stations, some of the public broadcast stations, do have line of budgets under what we call ecological funds, under the ministries of information. I don't know the situation in other countries, but in Nigeria, there is a ministry that is in charge of what we call ecological funds. And under ecological funds, you can access funds from there to mitigate some of these climate change challenges. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you. Well, I don't see any more hands, so, okay.
Ali?
Mohammed Ali, okay, go on, sir.
Thank you very much. I think the issue should be approached in two ways. One, we should, like put by the lady in the middle, we should try to address disasters, hazards before they become disasters. By so doing, we will do a lot. You will agree with me that we have made that as a point. Whenever there is any prediction or anything, this thing by the meteorological or the NIME or whatever it is, we propagate that and make sure it reaches a lot of people, the areas concerned, and quickly alert the communities, to alert the government, so that we can tackle these hazards before they become disasters. And that has worked really. You will see there, like in Nigeria, what we do with the NEMA, which is the National Emergency Management Agency, with the NAMET that produces the climate, with NISA that talks about flood. One of the major things we have in Nigeria is flood. And then whenever there is this, you can see that we do a lot of reports. We get reports from across the country. We bring experts to talk. We quickly alert the people, we bring government officials, so that we can prevent, not that we can prevent it, but we can sensitize people for them to know, for them to take actions or take informed decisions that are going to save them from such disasters if they come. On building resilience, the only thing that we need most is information. Once you get the information, you plan and know how to tackle the situation. Because if you fail to plan, automatically you are planning to fail. So as media, we can help build this resilience by bringing the subject matter up, by making it the subject of discussion, that everybody will know that this thing is happening. Just like the Kenyan head of Kenyan television has said, you need to bring this into limelight, and you need to take measures. Some of these measures could be short-term, others could be long-term. But now, once bitten, twice shy. It's now that the media is being affected as well, we also have to consider ourselves in planning, in reporting, and then in building the resilience within ourselves, not trying to just propagate and help others to build such resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I see no other hands, so I'll give Mary Daraja the opportunity to close, to give us our thoughts with which we'll close this session. If you were to decide, if you were to make a request to the management, to the government of Kenya, looking at the experience you had earlier this year, what would you ask for the most to make sure that should KBC face a similar situation as you did 3 months ago, you come out stronger and nothing about your operations will be interrupted?
I think learning from what happened, we've embarked on the process of installing solar in our transmission stations and the headquarters, so that if electricity is cut off, then we have solar to fall back on. And then we also investing in transport, such that we have vehicles that can maneuver areas that have difficult terrain during such a time. And as my colleague has pointed out, planning prior to such disasters is very important. But as I had mentioned earlier, we prepared, we planned, it didn't come. It came when it was least expected. That's what climate change does. So the other thing is that we're employing technology, whereby our technical team is installing a device that would enable them to remote control most of the transmitters, so that an engineer doesn't have to go to the site, but everything can be done from a central area to enable the transmission to continue going on. And finally, we have also realized that evacuation is very important for our journalists. Some of our journalists get affected by disasters, such as floods. It had never happened to us, but this time round it did. So evacuation is very necessary. So as we plan, we also plan on how to evacuate our employees wherever they are.
Thank you very much, Mary. Indeed, times are changing. The climate too is changing. And so there is no reason why we, as broadcasters, should not change with the time and the climate. We've heard thoughts. Our panelists have shared their opinions and have given us some things to think about, like taking care of ourselves. After all, you cannot give what you do not have. We've been told to be flexible in the way we handle these situations, to listen to the beat reporters, acknowledge commitment, innovate in management, adopt new technologies like the climate smart 5G energy efficient autonomous transmitters, and of course, always leverage information available to us. I sincerely apologize to my panelists who would have had more time to talk, but other sessions earlier in the day ate deep into our own time, so we have to cut ours very short. Okay, I'll just take a final thought from Mr. Wangibe. Ma, you have any other thing to share with us? Okay,
Yeah,
let me start with Wangibe, then we'll come to you. Just 30 seconds each, and then we'll call it a day.
There's no resilient reporter, no resilient cameraman, no resilient editor without life. There's no story bigger than life. We have to be the first persons who build the resilience by knowing, in spite of how well we want to work, those good pictures we want as a cameraman, we must always stay safety conscious, because there's no story that's bigger than life. You can miss one good picture. You have 20, 200, 1,000 more stories to tell. Let's protect our lives in situations of danger. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Maha, you can go on.
Yeah, I would like to say that technology evaluates depending on how the world evaluates. So we have always to be updated to see what is happening and how the technology can help us. Because today, yes, disaster became a major challenge in the world, and we need to really use technology to help us in order to save the lives.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time. Let's go and save lives. But as we do that, let's be sure that our lives too are safe. Thank you. My name is Onengie Fineface. Bye-bye.
Dumelang and welcome to Botswana Kabula. Botswana, the essence of stability. We invite you to explore the spirit of strength and witness its profound impact on our people and the world. Our doors are always open for business in a safe, secure, peaceful, and thriving environment. This peace and tranquility allows our people to express themselves freely, fostering a society of diverse ideas and opinions. Our people are ready and waiting to host you with beaming smiles and enchanting song and dance. Driven by our rich history and cultural heritage, we are proud to share our stories with the world. Every narrative, every challenge, every effort, whether good or bad, shapes our collective identity. The beautiful, colorful, and alluring landscapes of Botswana welcome you. In this stable and majestic atmosphere, we safeguard our natural resources, preserving some of the world's most unique physical features. The sheer harmony between our people and nature is a testament to the sustainability and balance we strive to maintain for future generations. Come and meet the right business partners and investors to diversify and expand. Set up your investment in Botswana and leverage on Botswana's proximity to the wider Southern African market. Our interconnected road, rail networks, coupled with bespoke infrastructural developments, make it easy for you to open shop, network, and trade in Botswana. These serve our economy and benefit our citizens positively, fueling economic growth and social progress. It is through reliable, stable governance and steadfast vision that we transform all our aspirations into tangible achievements. In a quest to make our country conducive for meetings, conferencing, and multi-sectoral tourism hub, we are more than ready to welcome the world to our shores. We invite you to be part of this remarkable African story, to witness the realization of the promises made and dreams fulfilled. Together, let us forge ahead, shaping a brighter future that is grounded in peace and harmony. This is Botswana, our pride, your destination.